Good afternoon, everyone. Atlanita, Tanzi, Amboastich, Okki. It's nice to be here with you today, even if it's on a virtual basis. Hopefully we're going to be able to gather in person again soon in the near future. I'm here today with my good friend Josephine Pon, Minister of Seniors Housing. And we're also pleased that Minister Hussein has joined us today, as well as Okimau Watchmaker and Tribal Chiefs Ventures Incorp. CEO Cameron Alexis. I also want to acknowledge that we are gathered here today on Treaty 6 territory, and I'm also proud to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a deep connection in history with this land as well. I'm pleased today for this very important announcement concerning our First Nations and Métis initiatives to build housing and create jobs and opportunity. Homes mean safety, stability, and everyone deserves an affordable and accessible home. For Indigenous communities, home is especially important. It's a privilege for me to be MC at today's announcement. First, I'd like to welcome Ahmed Hussein, the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, and Minister responsible for Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Minister Hussein, please.
Thank you so much, Minister Wilson, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm joining you today from Toronto, the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. It is a pleasure to be joining you virtually alongside Minister Wilson, Minister Pon, Chief Okimau Watchmaker, and Cameron Alexis. Je sais que nous avions to être à l'annonce d'aujourd'hui. I know we're very, very excited about today's announcement. We know that every Canadian deserves a safe and affordable place to call home, but far too many are forced to make the impossible choice between paying rent and buying groceries. Nous savons que chaque Canadien mérite un chez-soi sûr et abordable. Mais beaucoup trop d'entre eux doivent faire un choix impossible entre payer le loyer and nourrir leur famille. And we also know that our cities and communities find themselves at the front lines of dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. And this pandemic has only underscored and worsened existing housing challenges. And the reality is that the populations who are most at risk are more likely to find themselves in difficult housing situations. And these populations include women and children fleeing domestic violence, seniors, racialized groups including Black Canadians, and Indigenous peoples. With the second wave of the pandemic underway, we need more affordable housing, and we need it now. Ce que nous amène à l'annonce d'aujourd'hui, which brings us to today. Notre gouvernement, avec le gouvernement de l'Alberta, accorde un financement de 13,1 millions pour 4 projets de logement par des autochtones dans le cadre du programme d'immobilisation pour le logement des autochtones. Our government, alongside the government of Alberta, is providing $13.1 million in funding for 4 Indigenous-owned housing projects through the Indigenous Housing Capital Program. These projects, located in North Edmonton, Calgary, Lac Saint-Anne, and Victor Lake, will provide 70 units of affordable housing for Indigenous households. Today's announcements build on previous commitments made this year to invest a total of just under $10 million under the Indigenous Housing Capital Program to create 33 new housing units in the Edmonton area. This means that over 100 Indigenous families across the province of Alberta will have a new place to call home. We know it's been a particularly difficult time for families, including Indigenous communities facing unique challenges every day as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And our government recognizes the very real issue of systemic racism in Canada and around the world. And we're committed to addressing the barriers faced by Indigenous communities every single day. And it starts with ensuring that solutions for the community are provided by the community. Our targeted investments will not only stimulate the local economy and create well-paying jobs when they're needed the most, they will also ensure that the needs of Indigenous families, including seniors, youth, women, and other vulnerable populations, are met. We know these projects will help stimulate the local and provincial economies. To put it simply, this is great news for everyone. And federal funding is being delivered through the Canada-Alberta Bilateral Housing Agreement, a 10-year, $678 million agreement designed to breathe life in existing social and community housing and ensure that Albertans continue to have access to affordable and sustainable housing that meets their needs. This agreement is part of our government's national housing strategy, a 10-year, $70 billion plan to make sure that each and every Canadian has a safe and affordable place to call home. Ensemble, nous allons nous assurer que les résidents de la province de l'Alberta sont en sécurité et prospèrent pour les années à venir. Together, working together will ensure that Albertans are safe and thrive in the years to come. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, Miigwech.
Thank you, Minister Hussein. I'd like to now introduce my friend and colleague, the Minister of Seniors and Homes, the Honourable Josephine Pon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to my colleague and my good friend, Minister Wilson. I'm so pleased Minister Hassan has just joined us today. And just want to acknowledge our distinguished guests, Okimon, the watchmaker, and Cameron Alex, the CEO, the Tribal Chief of Ventures, Inc. I'm so pleased to bring a greeting on behalf of Premier Jason Kenney and my government colleagues. I would also like to acknowledge we are gathered today's honored Treaty 6 land and are proud to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share the deep connections and history with this land. Today, I'm proud to announce the funding to support Indigenous community and government to build affordable housing in Alberta. Alberta's government and federal governments are proud. As Mr. Hassan mentioned, we're proud to have a partnership with $13.1 million to build 70 houses unit in Edmonton, Calgary, Lakeside, and also the Victoria Lake. This housing unit will be designed and delivered and owned by and for Indigenous people. The Indigenous Housing Capital Program offers flexible autonomy for Indigenous community and organizations to build affordable housing. It encourages public and private developers to partner with Indigenous government and organizations to build needing house. I'm proud to two of the new projects we will fund the future Indigenous and non-Indigenous partnerships. Lakeside and Métis Community Associations of Committees group are partners in their projects, and while the Victor Lake Cooperative and also the Evergreens Foundations will work together to bring new houses to their community. This partnership will carry the projects forward and help build capacity and create economy opportunity. All of these projects will create almost 100 jobs, and that is a good news in Alberta. They are great examples of the government, First Nations, and the Métis organizations working together. We will continue to pursue similar partnership to support First Nations and the Métis government to build more affordable housing. Alberta's government will invest $30 million in the Indigenous Housing Capital Program over the next 3 years. Remember, applications to our program are available on a continuously basis, along with the partners, and I have mentioned, and I thank the Tribal Chief of Ventures, Inc., and the Aboriginal Friendship Center of Calgary for your support. And thank you to Mr. Hassan and our federal partners. I look forward to together when it is safe to do so, and for groundbreaking and ribbon cutting events in all these communities, and to seeing people move into their new home. Thank you all, and I will hand it back to Minister Wilson.
Thank you so much, Minister Pon. As Minister Pon said, this is a great example of a partnership between governments, First Nations, and Métis, and all the organizations and housing partners all working together. Now I'd ask Okimau Vern Watchmaker to say a few words, please. Chief, you're muted. Could you unmute? We can't hear you.
There.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister Wilson. First and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge Minister Pon, Minister Wilson from the government of Alberta, as well as Minister Hussein from federal government. I guess I also like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory and on this very day for this announcement. I'd like to, I guess, show some gratitude in terms of the partnership that's been created with our discussions and numerous meetings, as well as the work of our staff, the TCPI staff, Cam Alexis, director, and I guess looking forward to the first of many more commitments towards addressing long-standing issues of affordable housing for TCPI nations within Treaty 6 territory. We all know that the Treaty 6, the housing efforts that are on a continuous basis advocated by leadership, by the chiefs and all the hard workers. We need to acknowledge their hard work and also to recognize it as a treaty right, an obligation that the government of Canada, on the right of the Crown, as well as the government of Alberta, have that obligation to, to fulfill those addressing the long-standing housing needs. As well as like to, during this trying times of this, I guess, unprecedented times, recognizing our pestilence and famine clause in our treaty. Those are put in there so that we are not, I guess, not overlooked, as well as, I guess, having that opportunity to bring these long-standing issues to the forefront so that we can address them. I also want to acknowledge that we look forward to having a groundbreaking ceremony in the near future. Sometimes we're looking at June, but pending restrictions, of course. We're looking to have elders invited, and as well as invited guests as yourselves, and hopefully looking forward to that. And again, I'd like to thank you, Minister Pon, Mr. Wilson, Minister Hussein, for today's announcement, and look forward to many more. Thank you.
Thank you, Okimau Watchmaker. Thank you for that. I'm going to turn things over now to Cameron Alexis. He's the CEO of the Tribal Chiefs Ventures Incorporated. Cameron?
Thank you very much, Minister Wilson. Really appreciate your work. I want to thank Minister Hussein from the federal government. I want to thank Minister Pon, of course. I would say collectively, excellent work by all. I really want to also drill down and thank Stephanie Fletcher and her team, as well as the committee, for all their excellent work, and they work for Minister Pon. And we want to, because we work with them exclusively, to work on these initiatives for the past 3 years. And I really thank the governments for this initiative because it allows, our people to come off the streets and find affordable homes in which they can live in and call themselves a place to reside in, a place to have positive self-esteem established and everything else. Just recently we visited the downtown core of Edmonton, and it's really painful to see our people on the streets. And when we saw that, the chiefs of TCBI signaled that we have to do something. And collectively, we worked hard with the respective governments to do our part. We want to congratulate the other three brothers and sisters as well who have received funding. This is not an easy task. It's a difficult work. But at the same time, I really feel comfortable that we have done something to at least impact some of our Indigenous people, to get them off the streets and empower them. And that includes special needs people, elders, students, women. And this is just the beginning, in my view, and we need to keep going. And I really, Edmonton was chosen because it is a place of gathering. And that's one of the reasons why it was chosen as such, because our people of the TCBI nations, the 6 nations, do reside in the city of Edmonton for a multitude of reasons. So it's great to see this. And yes, ministers, I support exactly what has been stated. This also does provide an economic stimulus as well. And it's great to see that. But the most important thing, ladies, gentlemen, is that the elders have told us we need to help our people and get them off the streets. And that's what we've done here. And my hat's off to all the respective governments here that have worked together. And I include, of course, the federal government, the provincial government, and the municipal government. And of course, the final, the government, of course, is the 6 nations of TCBI. We are a level of government, and this is groundbreaking, and I certainly hope it doesn't stop here. And I much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cameron, for those great words. And I want to thank all of our speakers here today. And this is going to conclude our formal portion of today. So we're going to now pass it over to Minister Pon's Secretary, Natalie, to take questions from the media.
Thank you very much, Minister Wilson. Seeing that there's no questions in the queue, that concludes our announcement for today. Thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.